Welcome to Light and Love, where we help you find the essence of you. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Light and Love. This is season 2, episode 3, and as always, I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous. We skipped last week because honestly, I had a very hard week last week personally, and being here right now, I feel good. I was worried I was going to feel a little bit triggered being here, but I feel amazing and I'm happy I'm doing this. I told myself that if I got through last week, I got myself out of a really dark place, that I would commit to doing this, and thanks be to God, thanks be to the universe, and dedicate it to my friend Zonio because I really had a hard week last week. So I don't want to get emotional, but today's episode is about that. And honestly, I feel like the universe put me through it because I had to have a deeper look at it and a deeper understanding and share it as my purpose. So here we are. I'm excited. Let's get into it. Today's episode is going to be about how letting go can set you free. And I know last episode I touched quickly on letting go, accepting and letting go and resistance, and this one is going to be so much deeper because what I went through really gave me a deeper understanding. It was so hard, but it really did give me a deeper understanding, and I'm here to talk about that today. So what I learned last week is the depths of our mind and how much we need to control our mind to really be in a good place, and if we don't treat it good, it's not going to treat us good back. So this episode is actually perfect for today, the day I'm recording, because it is a new moon in Leo, and that really is all about letting go and making room for the new, making room for positivity. So it's so perfect that I'm doing this today. I know it'll be dropping next week, but today is the new moon in Leo, so I feel like it's so fitting for me personally to be recording this right now. And I wrote notes this time, guys, so I'm going to stay on track. But back to our minds and how powerful they are. They're so powerful. We really do have the choice to control them. We can wreak havoc in our own minds. And I talked about that last time. I've done it before to myself, but this time was so much more intense what I put myself through. And letting go is how you can give your mind peace. So you can be your own worst enemy or you can be your best friend. It is your choice. It's gonna be hard. And I feel like last episode I made letting go sound easy. It's so not easy. It's really not. It takes so much work. And that's what this episode is gonna be about. The work that you have to put in order to let go of an experience, of a situation, of an emotion. Anything you need to let go of that is trapped within you, in your mind, in your body, in your soul, because they're all connected. We got to learn how to let it go. So what happened with me last week was I really put myself in a really negative, dark place because I was consuming an overload of negative information on social media, on the internet, on YouTube, everywhere. Everything I was looking at was negative. And I don't want to be like, I'm dismissing negativity, but for my own health, it was not good for me. And I had to take a step back and be like, my whole world was shaken from the ground up because of all the negative information I was taking in, and I really didn't have a hold of my own mind. I wasn't putting in positivity as well. I wasn't practicing what I preach. I wasn't doing my daily routines. Like, I wasn't taking care of my mind health, so the negativity really consumed me. Your mind is fertile ground for anything that goes in there. So if it's fertile and all you're putting is negativity, that's going to grow and grow and grow. And I messed up by not focusing on making sure there was a balance in my mind. There was no checks and balances. I wasn't being mindful of what I was putting in my mind. I wasn't being mindful of how much negative information and how much positive information I was putting in my mind. So it really consumed me, the negativity. And it really felt like such a dark place that I had to crawl out of, like literally crawl out of it. because it's so crazy what your mind can do. That it's so powerful. And I am ranting, but if you know you've been through a situation, like I don't want to talk about exactly what the situation is because we all go through this. Our situations, our experiences, they're different, but how we react and what goes on in our head, it's the same. So that's why I want to talk about, what I did to kind of get through that, because it doesn't matter what situation you're going through. We've all had these moments where there's really low lows, and this is how letting go gets you out of that low place. So from my personal experience, the tools that I highly suggest to get yourself to let go is first, you need to monitor your thoughts. We need to assess what it is that's going on in our mind. What is consuming your mind? Is it a situation that happened with a friend, a family? Is it a situation that happened with your lover? Is it something that happened at work? All of these things may sound small, but we can magnify those situations in our head, and that's where the chaos comes from. That's where the consuming comes from. So first, you really need to identify what it is that is going on in your head. So you really have to monitor your thoughts. What's going on? And if you identify what's going on, what is it that you constantly keep thinking about? What is consuming you? What are you thinking about so much that you're so distracted? What is it? What is the situation? What is the feeling? So first you need to monitor them so you can find out what is bothering me, Like sometimes there isn't a definite answer, but most of the time there kind of is. Like for me, I like to diagnose myself, I highly do not recommend that because you'll see later what that does to me. But I really had to monitor my thoughts, like, okay, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about this. And once I monitored, then I had to be like, okay, don't think about that, don't think about that. Once the thought comes up, revert the thought. It's just like meditation where you have to revert the thought to something else. And I'm telling you, this takes work. And it physically takes a toll, because honestly, when I was doing this, my eyes and my head would hurt because I felt like it was working so hard to process the thoughts and move them away and revert my attention to something else. So it was kind of like a filter. I was filtering my thoughts, but it really helped because then once I could identify what I'm thinking about, it became easier for me to replace it with something else. Everything is going to sound easy because everything is easier said than done. So I'm just letting you know my physical symptom from this was literally my eyes and my head hurt. So every time I had a bad thought come up, I would give in and keep thinking about it and deeper and deeper and deeper. So when I gave into the thought, it would become a spiral. So instead, I would have to revert my attention to something else. Like think of something else. Think of something else. Don't give in to that thought. Don't give in to that energy. Think of something else. And really, it's either you keep thinking about it, or what would happen to me as well is I would be good. I wouldn't be worrying about it. I would be back to normal, and then the anxiety set in of having anxiety pretty much is what happened to me. So having anxiety and then the fear of having it again would get the best of me. So I kept myself in a mental loop about it. Who knows if it's over, but today I feel good. Today is a new day, and I want to talk about it because I want to release it. This is part of it. But basically, I would be doing good, and then I would remember what it felt like to be in that bad place, and it would bring me back because I let my attention go back there and be like, oh, I feel so good. Like, remember when I felt bad, and literally instantly bring myself back to that place. So it's really like you really have to monitor those thoughts, monitor what you're thinking. And after that, the next thing you want to do is monitor your patterns. So how do you act when you have these thoughts? Where does your mind go? How does your body feel? You really have to pay attention, like what's going on in your head? What is it that you're doing when you have these thoughts? So if you do cave into having the negative thought or thinking about the situation, what is it that you do? So really figure out what you do. So for example, for me personally, whenever I would be in a negative place, in a bad place, or like the negative thoughts would consume me, what happened was I went to worst case scenario. I literally went to worst case scenario. I would make myself feel like something was wrong. So I put myself back into a spiral and I would just go to worst case, like, oh my God, I'm going to be like this forever. This is never going to go away. There's something wrong with me. That's literally what I would do. And also what I would do is, I'm a Virgo, and Virgos are extremely, extremely, extremely critical people. And when I say critical, like, there's no one as critical as us, but I would be critical on myself. And this was like the worst I've ever felt it. Like, I would be mad at myself for having this feeling, for having these thoughts. And I would just be beating myself up literally in my head, like punching myself for having these thoughts. So it's like I have a bad thought, and then I would think the worst case scenario, and then I get mad at myself for even going there. So it was like a vicious cycle in my head, but I was able to identify exactly what I was doing. And then once I was in the negative place, I just kept digging myself deeper and deeper. But then, like I said, it was a pattern. So it's a pattern, and I know I've done it before. So I thought about times where I've done this before. And one time, this is a funny example, and I laugh at it now because it really got me through what I was doing in my head. But I had like an ear infection in the beginning of the year, and it was kind of like a week-long ear thing. I didn't go to the doctor. I was on vacation and doing a bunch of things, so I didn't have time to go to the doctor. And I was convinced that my ear, like, I was going to be deaf in one ear for the rest of my life. Just because 1 week my ear was hurting and I couldn't hear. It was just clogged. So I literally convinced myself that I was going to be deaf in 1 ear. That's what my mind does. That's what I'm talking about when I say worst case scenario. And then I keep incessantly thinking about it, like thinking about my ear, like, oh my God, it's clogged. Oh my God, oh my God. So it's like this loop. So that's the loop I'm talking about. I put myself in the loop and I keep thinking about it, and then I keep thinking about the worst case, and it's a vicious cycle. It really is. So I've done it before. So this time when I was doing it, I was like, okay, you've done this before. Everything passes. But in the moment when I'm thinking about worst case scenario and forever and being critical, it feels like it's going to be forever. But I had to remind myself that I've done this before and that it passed. So the time where I felt the worst, it passed. It went away. I was fine again. So I had to think about that and be like, okay, you're doing this to yourself. It's going to be okay. So the next step is to really feel it out physically. You have to feel everything out. The thing is, I was overthinking. So I was having anxiety from overthinking. So I had to feel it out. And that comes with, like, in your mind, feel it out. Physically, feel it out. So let's first talk about physically. Our minds and our bodies are connected, and they need to release the energy that we're creating inside them. So our thoughts are creating energy, and we really need to get it out. And our body will give us physical symptoms, letting us know that the energy is going and going and going and going in your body. So for my body, I listened to the physical symptoms, and for me, the discomfort I started feeling was I was feeling nauseous. I would freaking have diarrhea. I noticed I started yawning a lot. So whenever I started feeling a little bit anxious, I would yawn, and I think it was my body trying to get air because I wasn't like taking deep breaths. So I would yawn, and I noticed that would happen every time I started to get anxious. So, and then also I noticed my body temperature would start dropping, so I would get cold even though it's super hot. So I really tried to be in tune with those. And what happened was the physical symptoms really did become a trigger for me. So every time I felt that physical symptom, it would kind of put me back in that loop that I was talking about, I'm sweating, the mental loop that I was having. But instead, I just was like, okay, these are the symptoms, because sometimes there's a disconnect between your mind and your body. And what happened for me was I was overthinking too much in my head, that my body, I wasn't paying attention to my body. Like I was, but I wasn't. Like I wasn't giving it its time to shine. I wasn't thanking it for the guidance it was giving me. Instead, I was letting it worry me. So there was like a real disconnect between my mind and my body. Like I felt the symptoms, but then I would let them get to my head. So instead, I had to change my perspective about the symptoms because they kept triggering me and I didn't want them to trigger me. Instead, I honestly had to be like, okay, let me just move my mind from my mind to my body and be like, okay, these are my guidance. Like, this is my body telling me what's happening. Like, I'm thankful that my body is trying to alert me. So I started to have gratitude for my body. Like, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know something's wrong. Thank you for getting me out of my mind and into my body. So now I'm paying attention to my body. You know, I had to kind of flip the script on myself because it was a trigger and it would continue to be a trigger if I let it. But instead I had to be like, okay, these are my symptoms. This is my body telling me something. Let's move on from my head to my body and just really like think of the miracle it is that they can talk to each other and let them be in sync with each other, because there was a real disconnect for me because I was so in my head. And again, that's why my eyes and my head hurt, because I was only in my head. So I really had to flip the script and just thank my body for trying to warn me, like, okay, thank you for warning me, I'll be okay. You know what I mean? Like, instead of like, oh my God, you know, like, it's okay if you do that, but I'm trying to tell you guys this because I hope it helps somebody. I don't know the extent to what other people feel it or feel these things, but for me, this is what I went through, and I truly hope it helps somebody because these were some of the worst feelings I ever felt. This is the worst I've ever been in my own mind. Like, I was really upset at myself for all of this, and that's like the worst thing I could have done. So anyways, we'll get to that later. But the next thing you need to do, like, okay, I felt it out physically. I saw the symptoms. So basically what I'm doing is really watching myself. I'm monitoring myself in all types of ways because I really had to like assess like what's going on. So if I knew what was going on, then I could kind of combat it, is basically what I'm doing. And so these tools really helped me assess myself. So the next one is I had to talk it out mentally. So since I was overthinking so much, the energy was so caught up in me. I was still working out in the morning. I was pushing through to work out in the morning, but that's all I could really do. And then like everything would set in after that. But I noticed that I had to let out my thoughts. Otherwise, they were just going to keep swirling around. And the best way to let out your thoughts, seriously, you guys, is talking to someone that you feel safe with. And if you don't feel like you have this, then you can journal. You have to let the thoughts out. You have to physically let it out. So I know I'm talking about talking it out mentally, but this is a physical action. So you need to talk it out verbally with somebody, a professional, a friend, a loved one, or you can journal. Like if you don't have those things, the next step is you can journal. Okay, and I know it's really hard to do these things when you're in this place. So maybe right after you're calmed down, you can journal and, you know, kind of document your experience and just let out how you felt, because it is okay. Whatever you're feeling is okay, but you have to let it out to something, someone. And then the next thing, honestly, it helped me so much. I don't do this often, so for me, this was kind of a big deal. I had to talk to myself out loud because, again, physically letting it out was like the best thing I could do for myself. So I really had to talk out loud to myself. And it's so underrated. I don't know if you guys do it, but if you're not doing it, you really need to start talking to yourself out loud. And the thoughts in our head that typically aren't good, this is our ego. And we're letting the ego get the best of us, really. If you're just letting it swirl around in your head and you're not taking action on how to get off of that loop, then you're letting your ego get the best of you. And the negativity, it really will consume you. It will. So let's try not to let it do that. And when you feel this happening, you need to give yourself a pep talk. So I feel like this is actually the best one out of all of them because not everyone feels safe with someone that they can talk to, or not everyone is ready to journal maybe, but talking to myself out loud, like in the shower, was a place that I talked to myself a lot. It really helped because it would kind of calm me down, because instead of it swirling around, that's what it does, it's like swishing around the thoughts. Instead of doing that, I kind of would like talk back to myself. But the voice that you have to talk back to yourself in when you're talking out loud, you need to be the good person. You need to be the cheerleader, the pep talker. Don't be negative. The negative is what's in the head. So when you're talking out loud to yourself, you need to be the positive person. It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. This is normal. Like, laugh at yourself a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, so that when you're talking out loud to yourself, it needs to be positive. It has to be positive, because you're combating the negative that's going on in your mind. So really be your own cheerleader, be your own friend, really help yourself out of the situation, and know that, remind yourself that better times are on the way. Like, it's going to be okay. This isn't going to last forever. And I'm telling you, there's so much power in this tool. Talking to yourself, but talking to yourself in a positive way. Okay, so for me, I was talking to my boyfriend, and he really helped me. Like, bless his soul, seriously. Like, sometimes I didn't want to talk to him. Like, I wanted to, but I didn't want to lay everything out on him. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. We feel like it's too much for other people, and we don't want to be a burden. But you know, he is someone that I trust, and I allowed myself to be extra vulnerable and talk to him when I needed it, because the thing was, for me, I didn't want to feel crazy. I didn't want him to judge me, or I was nervous if I told someone that they would make it seem like something was wrong with me. I'm being super like raw now, but I was really nervous that someone was going to kind of make me feel like something was wrong with me, when I know nothing's wrong with me. But you know, when you're in that place, you're just, at least for me, I was thinking all kinds of things. So when I talked to him, and he was like, it's okay, everyone goes through this, everyone goes through lows, everyone goes through dark times, it happens for a reason, you know, like those pep talks really helped. And for me, I was scared to tell my family, so when I saw my mom on the weekend, I actually finally told her, and I felt so much better. Like, just letting it out and like facing it head on in a way, like, it really felt good. It really made me feel like, okay, like I can breathe, like I'm fine, like this happens to everybody. So you really need to have a safe space with the person, though. You don't need somebody that's going to be like, you need to calm down, you need to take it easy, like you need to take a chill pill, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, you really need to find a safe place. And if you don't have that in somebody, if you have somebody that's telling you you're crazy, or calm down, or there's worse, you know what I mean? You know what I mean. Those things, that's not the right person to talk to. And then maybe, okay, so maybe that's not the right person you need to talk to. So, you know, again, just be very mindful. And if you don't have somebody, then obviously, you know, professional help as well, if you can, or journal and talk out loud. I really promise it makes all the difference. And then next, you guys, I'm sweating. Like, my back is sweating. Okay. So also another tip that the lady who read my birth chart told me, she actually told me, I guess Russ reminded me, my boyfriend reminded me that she told me I would be going through this. So that also gave me a lot of comfort that she had said this a month or so ago. And she said that basically if I'm uninspired or kind of like in a low place, then I need to either go to the beach or take a salt bath and immerse my whole body, or just my feet if that's all I can do, and really let the universe kind of take all the thoughts away. Like when you're in the salt water, there's something about the salt water, let the universe take the thoughts away to make room for new ones. So basically, you know, letting go and making room for the new. And I think that was really cool. I did do that at the beach early on in the week. It didn't help at the moment, but I really tried to do that for myself. I tried to do everything I could for myself, honestly. And the next thing that we need to do, so the next tool, is to feel it out emotionally. These are all different, like feeling it out physically, physical symptoms in your body, feeling it out mentally. These are all different tools. So feeling it out emotionally, most of the time we need an emotional release. But I think at least for me, I'm not a very emotional person. I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve. It's really, I'm just not that emotional in general. So during this time, it was really important for me to be emotional, to let my emotions come out. So I really had to, I think there was a lot of trapped emotions, but since I'm not used to being so emotional, I didn't know what was going on. So I didn't know what I had to let out. But there was a lot of times where I cried. This is probably the most I've ever cried, like in a period of time, because I don't cry often. I just don't really let out a lot of emotions. So during this time, I really had to get in touch with my emotions and let them out. So again, you have to find a safe place. You need to let it out. So what happens is when we keep the emotions inside of us, we start to have physical symptoms, and they can turn into physical illness. You know, it can manifest in many ways. So it's really important to have an emotional release. Even if you're like me and you're not really emotional, but if you feel like crying, definitely cry. Because for the longest time in the week, it was a week, you guys, and it felt like forever that I felt this way. It just didn't feel good. It felt so long. But I even cried yesterday, so who knows? I might cry today. I'm not going to manifest that, but if you feel like crying, then cry. Like, it's any given moment. Just do what you need to do. Seriously. Like, I would basically, what would happen to me is I would try to compose myself, and the more I tried to act normal, the more everything was like festering up inside me. Like, I tried to push through dinner one day and I was just like, oh my God. And then everything became overstimulating for me, like everything, because in my head, I'm going through so much and I'm trying to act normal, and it was just too much for me. And then after, I ended up taking a shower and I cried like a lot. And that's when I told God and the universe and Zonio that, like, I'm gonna do this. I know I'm going through this. I'm gonna share it. Like, I hope this can help other people. Like, I had to cry so much. And I thought of my friend Zonio all week long. And every single time I thought about him, I cried. Every single time. So I think it was really just like my way of releasing any trapped emotions that I've had over the years. It could have been years that these have been trapped in me and I just never let them out because I didn't feel them at any given time, but now was the time. Now I'm like, okay, if I need to cry, like, let that shit out. Because I noticed every single time I cried, I felt so much lighter. Like, it's almost like it would be like an ugly cry, like, oh my God, why am I going through it? Like, I would never ask myself, why am I going through this? Because I know there's a reason for everything. There's a lesson in everything. And I would always try to keep in mind everything I've learned. As crazy as I was going in my head, I tried to keep everything that I knew to be true in my mind. I was at a battle in my mind, but there are things that I know to be true, and I really kept that close to my heart. And I think that won. Like, that silver lining for me was just remember what you know to be true. Remember what you believe in. Even in this moment, if you can't feel it, remember it. And that really helped me. And yeah, just every single time I let out the cries, like, I would feel so much better, like, instantly. It's almost like after I cried, this might sound crazy or funny. It's kind of funny to me. Every single time I cried after, it made me want to laugh because I'm like, oh my God, like, you're being so dramatic. But I was proud of myself for letting it out because it needed to be let out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then every time, like, I would realize what was happening to me personally was, since I'm so critical and I expect perfection, it's just like, that's just in me. I was upset at myself for, one, letting this happen. 2, I was scared to be vulnerable with myself. 3, I was just upset at myself for it. And I say this because I just want to be honest in my story, but, like, I don't want you guys to be upset with yourselves. So that's where I had to find compassion for myself, because I wouldn't want to be mad at someone else for going through this. Like, if someone were speaking to me about this, like, I would be so compassionate for them and be like, everything I needed, I would do for someone. So if you would do that for someone else, you have to do it for yourself. So for me, like, I was just like, oh my God, you're being so hard on yourself. Like, I would try to, like, fight it so hard, the anxiety. I would fight it and fight it. Like, don't give in, don't give in, don't give in. But if I didn't let it out physically, mentally, emotionally, it was gonna stay. Like, it was literally gonna stay in my mind. So what would happen was I was being so prideful, I guess, and just not wanting to give into it. Like, I'm like, do I not give into it and ignore it? Because if I give into it, then we're going to go through this cycle. But instead, really what I was doing was being compassionate for myself and letting myself feel, letting myself release things, and then being able to move on. So there was a loop happening, you guys. A loop happens. This happens to all of us. Our minds, when we go through something, and we keep everything trapped and we don't really let go of it, it stays in our mind. Obviously, we replay the scenario over and over and over. We replay what could have, should have been done. Like, we replay it. So when our mind replays things, it takes us back to that place. So for me, I would replay what had happened with my anxiety attack. And every time I would replay it, it would put me back in that place. It's literally like it just happened. So that's why I'm saying it felt so long. It was only like a week of going through it, but me thinking about it and reviewing what happened and just remembering it, it really puts you back. So your mind doesn't know the difference in time between past, present, and future. So it will, if you think about that moment or what happened or a situation, like, you're going to bring your everything back to that moment, and all the emotions will come up again, all the physical symptoms, everything's going to come up again. So that's why we have to let it go. And it's okay to hold on to situations, like, things happen and we still will always wonder about them. That's just what we do. But when I'm talking about letting go, I'm talking about if it's consuming you, because sometimes things consume us if we let them. Again, our minds are so powerful, so if we let something consume us, it will. So if you feel like something is consuming you, it's time to let go, because it'll really give you so much more peace. So that's pretty much the wrap up for this episode. But the most important thing that I want you guys to know is that bad times don't last forever. And that, like I said earlier, that was the silver lining for me, was like, this isn't forever. Like, everything is temporary. Nothing is forever. So just knowing that really got me through this. And I hope that helps you guys, because just remember a time when it was bad and then it was good, like, it'll be bad, but it'll be good again. It just takes time. And faith will get you through, but you have to allow yourself to know that. So if I didn't let myself believe that, there's no way that faith would have helped me, I don't think. So when you have faith in something, you really have to believe it. So definitely, I hope this helps. And remember, if you are going through something and you need to let go, the tools that I recommend are, first, monitoring your thoughts. Assess what is consuming you. Next, let it out physically, or feel it out physically. So, what's happening? Like, if you're angry about something, like, what starts to happen to your body? Like, are you starting to sweat? Are you starting to, like, clench? Like, what's happening? Just so you can start identifying, like, what's going on with yourself. And then you need to let it out mentally. So again, talk to someone you trust, talk to someone you feel safe with, talk to a professional, or you can journal. So for me, I tried to, like, do a lot of things, like, to combat it in my mind, but basically I couldn't, those tools weren't working yet. First, I had to, like, let it all out. So that's what this episode is about. Next episode, I want to go over things that we need to do to keep our minds on track and to combat it. But these right here are letting go, tools to let go. So talk it out mentally. So, you need to start talking to yourself out loud. Physical things, okay? We need to feel it physically, and then we also physically need to let it out. So whatever's in our head, we have to let it out physically. So talking out loud to yourself or to someone, or journaling as well. And then the next thing we need to do is to feel it out emotionally. If any emotion comes up, you have to let yourself feel it. You have to be completely vulnerable and really let it out. Let out the cry, let out the screams. Do what you need to do, because you have to get the energy out. The energy is stuck inside of you. So whatever you need to do emotionally to let it out, if you need to freaking laugh at yourself, crack up at yourself, cry, punch and kick, obviously don't do that to anybody, but the pillow, whatever, do what you need to do to let the emotion side of it out. So there's a lot of factors to this, but I really hope these tools help you guys. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. I seriously hope this gets to someone. And I just want to say that this isn't just a one-day process. This is a process that you have to repeat until you can dig yourself out of the dark place. So, however long it takes, there's no timeline for this. There really isn't, because everybody is different, but it's a lot of work. So it just depends how bad. It doesn't depend how bad you want it. It depends on your willpower to do this. And willpower is a muscle that we need to build. What is your will to do this? We're in control, and we have to take the control back. So I hope this episode is going to help you guys do that. And I'm sending you guys all the love, all the peace and happiness in the world. And thank you guys again for listening. I will see you in next week's episode. Bye. Thanks for listening. See you guys next week for another episode of Light and Love.